Sir, audible, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. We will be having a seminar today, and we have three speakers. These are all on basic subjects. So these are all very important for your practical and theory examination. Professor Ramanuj Mukherjee, who is Professor of Surgery at Arjigarh Medical College, will take us through these scenarios. So the first speaker will be Dr. Shayandi Pradhan, who is a junior resident second year at RKM Shayaputistan Biominister Medical Sciences. The first discussion will be on methods of sterilization of surgical instruments. Oh, sorry. This is Dr. Omkar Nath. Sorry. Method of sterilization of surgical instruments by Dr. Omkar Nath, second year DNB PGT at MR Bangalore Hospital. Dr. Omkar, you can start sharing your screen.
Hello, Omkarnath, very good morning.
Good morning,
So, you have one among the most important topics that you are going to say. And believe me, this topic as a surgeon is one among the most important, is a very understatement. Because as a surgeon, everything that you are going to say or show today, not only for your exam, the exam of life, this is important. Particularly laparoscopic instruments, how you are going to do. Okay, so please start your presentation.
Good morning, sir, seniors, and my dear friends. Myself, Dr. Omkar Nath, second year DNB PGT, Department of General Surgery in MR Bangalore Hospital, here to present seminar on methods of sterilization of the surgical instruments. Before going into the methods of the sterilization of the surgical instrument, let's have an overview on some of the terms which we commonly came across in our fields. Sterilization, it is the process by which an article, surface, or medium is freed of all living microorganisms, either in the vegetative or spore states. Disinfection, it is the destruction or removal of all pathogenic organisms or organisms capable of giving rise to the infection. Asepsis, it is the term used to indicate the prevention of infection, usually by inhibiting the growth of bacteria in wounds or tissues. Decontamination, it is the process of rendering an article or area free of danger from contaminants, including microbial, chemical, radioactive, and other hazards. Antiseptics, it is the chemical disinfectants that can be safely applied on the skin or mucous membrane and are used to prevent infection by inhibiting the growth of bacteria. Now coming to the level of disinfection, there are three levels. Low level disinfection, it decreases the overall number of microorganisms, but tubercle bacilli and bacterial spores are not killed. Example of low level disinfection is quaternary ammonium compounds. Now intermediate level of disinfection, it kills tubercle bacilli and other microorganisms, most viruses and fungi, but can't kill bacterial spores. Examples of intermediate level of disinfection is alcohol, phenolic compounds, and iodophors. High level disinfection, it kills almost all microorganisms but did not kill the bacterial spores. Example is glutaraldehyde and hydrogen peroxide. Now coming to the sterilizing agents, various sterilizing agents. There are physical agents and physical sterilizing agents and chemical sterilizing agents. Among physical sterilizing agents, there is flaming, incineration, hot air oven, boiling, autoclaving, filtration, radiation, and ultrasonic and sonic vibration. And chemical agents, we have alcohol, that is ethyl alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, aldehydes in the form of formaldehyde, glutaraldehyde, dyes, halogens, phenols, metallic salts, and gases like ethylene oxide, formaldehyde, and beta propyolactone. Now coming to the physical agents, flaming. It is used in case of urgency when an instrument has fallen down from the operation table and is urgently required. In this case, rectified spirit is poured on the instrument and flamed. But it is damaging for sharp instruments, as it decreases the sharpness of the instrument. Hot air oven. It is a method of sterilization by dry heat. In this case, instrument is kept in a hot air oven at a temperature of 160 degrees Celsius for 1 hour. Various instruments sterilized by hot air oven are forceps, scissor, scalpel, glass syringe, swabs. For sterilization control, brown tube is used. After proper sterilization, a green color is produced after 60 minutes at 160 degrees Celsius or after 115 minutes at 150 degrees Celsius. Incineration. It is used to disinfect contaminated articles like dressings. Boiling. Vegetative bacteria are killed almost immediately at 90 to 100 degrees Celsius, but bacteria producing spores require prolonged period of boiling for sterilization. For disinfection, boiling at 100 degrees Celsius for 5 minutes at normal pressure is required. And for sterilization of the instrument, boiling at 100 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes is required. It is not suitable for sharp instrument because it leads to the loss of sharpness and crust formation. It is also not useful for gloves or other rubber materials. Now coming to autoclaving, it is method of sterilization using steam under high pressure. In standard autoclaving, sterilization is done at 121 degrees Celsius at 15 pounds per square inch pressure for 30 minutes for metallic instrument and for 15 minutes for rubber materials like catheter, gloves, drains, etc. In high pressure autoclaving, sterilization is done at 134 degrees Celsius at 30 pounds per square inch pressure for 3 minutes. It is used for bulk sterilization in central sterilization units. Autoclaving can kill all organisms, including spores. Various instruments and materials sterilized by autoclaving are surgical gloves, linen, dressing, and other surgical instruments. Double autoclaving is done for instrument of orthopedic or ophthalmic surgery. Now, sterilization control. Completeness of sterilization is confirmed by using a specific gelatin product is precipitate only in steam under pressure for 20 minutes. Green colored strip turns to black if autoclaving is complete. Now for completeness of sterilization in mass scale, Bacillus thermophilus spores are used. Radiation. In radiation, we have non-ionizing radiation and ionizing radiation. Non-ionizing radiation consists like infrared, ultraviolet rays. It is considered as a form of hot air sterilization. Infrared radiation is used for rapid mass sterilization of prepacked items such as syringes and catheters. And the ultraviolet radiation is used for disinfecting enclosed areas such as operation theater, laboratories. Now coming to the ionizing radiation like gamma rays and X-rays, it is a form of cold sterilization because it doesn't increase the temperature of the instrument. Gamma radiation, it is useful for large-scale industrial sterilization. It is not applicable for sterilization of instrument in operative theater setup. It is used as a commercial method to sterilize suture material, disposable material in packets, syringes, swabs, and catheters. Now coming to the chemical agents, we have aldehydes like 2% glutaraldehyde, commonly known as Sidex. It is potent bactericidal, sporicidal, fungicidal, and viricidal. For sterilization, instrument is immersed in 2% glutaraldehyde for 4 hours. And for disinfection, 15 to 20 minutes is sufficient. Various instruments and materials sterilized by glutaraldehyde is sharp instruments, fiber optic instrument like laparoscope, cystoscope, bronchoscope, ET tube. Now formaldehyde, it is bactericidal and sporicidal. It is used to preserve anatomical specimen. 10% formalin containing 0.5% sodium tetraborate is used to sterilize clean metal instruments. Now, formaldehyde gas, it is used for sterilizing instrument, heat-sensitive catheters. Also used for fumigating wards, operation theaters, and laboratories. Optical instruments like cystoscope, laparoscope may be sterilized by keeping them in formalin vaporizer for 1 hour. Lysol. It is emulsified cresol with soap. It is used commonly in the form of 2% solution. It is used for sterilization of sharp instruments. Dipping in concentrated Lysol solution for 1 hour is adequate for sterilization. In case of if we use diluted Lysol, then 24 we used to keep instrument for 24 hours for sterilization. Now, peracetic acid. It is effective against all microorganisms, including the bacterial spores. It involves immersion of instrument at a temperature of 50 to 56 degrees Celsius for 12 minutes. Now, alcohol. Ethyl alcohol, as in the form of ethyl alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. It is mainly used as skin antiseptics, but it has no action on spores. Must be used at a concentration of 60 to 90% in water to be effective. Isopropyl alcohol is mainly preferred over ethyl alcohol because it is more bactericidal and less volatile. Needle, unused suture kept immersed for 12 hours for subsequent use in alcohol. Now, halogens. Iodine, it is used as skin disinfectant. It is actively bactericidal with moderate action against spores. Chlorine, it is used commonly as hypochlorites. It is bactericidal. And organic chloramines are used as an antiseptic for dressing wounds. Now, coming to the USOL, it is Edinburgh University solution. It contains sodium hypochlorite, boric acid, and calcium hydroxide. USOL bath is dipping the ulcer bearing part in dilute USOL solution for 30 minutes, 2 to 3 times a day. These are the list of various materials and the method of sterilization. Like all theater appliances are sterilized by autoclaving. Sharp instruments like scissors, needle, blade, plastic material, all these are sterilized by 2% glutaraldehyde and Lysol. Endoscope by glutaraldehyde. Syringe by autoclaving, hot air oven, gamma radiation. Operation theaters and rooms are usually sterilized by UV radiation or by formaldehyde. Ward, sick rooms and furniture sterilized by formaldehyde, iodophor. Thank you.
Omkar, you have not touched the very important modes of sterilization like plasma sterilization, and you should have given little more about ETO.
Yes, I was going to say about that, Omkar, because see, the modern day sterilization will heavily depend upon ETO, will heavily depend upon plasma sterilizer. Omkar, can you tell us what are the principles of use of glutaraldehyde for laparoscopic instruments? What is the strength of glutaraldehyde that you will use for a laparoscopic instrument disinfection?
2%. 2% glutaraldehyde.
2%. Number one. Number two, what is the duration of contact of the instrument with glutaraldehyde?
Sir, for sterilization, 30 minutes, sir. And for sterilization, 4 to 10 hours, sir. And for disinfection, 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay. Now, not exactly very agree with you on this point, because as you have said, the amount of exposure for disinfection is at least 20 minutes. Please don't say 15 to 20 minutes.
Yes.
It is at least, that is the minimum duration. 15 to 20 minutes is not. Number one. Number two, the sterilization duration is much longer. It depends upon the manufacturer's requirement. Like Sidex has a minimum duration of 22 hours. What is the pH of use of glutaraldehyde? Always see the manufacturing, the pH is more on the alkaline side, around 7.5 to 8. What type of container should be there for storing the glutaraldehyde?
Plastic containers.
Not exactly again. See, plastic containers, what they do is that they leach the organic solvents, and the quantity and the quality of the glutaraldehyde deteriorates with time. Number one. Number two, plastic containers itself can contain spores, which can be a potential source of contamination. Number three, plastic containers can sometimes contain algae, which are resistant to various kinds of, say, disinfecting agents. Hence, it is preferable to take a metal container which can be autoclavable. Last one, you are using a group of lab instruments in glutaraldehyde. What is the quantity of glutaraldehyde and how many instruments can be dipped in one tray? I know this is not a very sharp question, but still, I think you have got the question. All the instruments must be dipping completely in the glutaraldehyde. No part of the instrument should be partially out of glutaraldehyde. After you have taken them from the glutaraldehyde, do you use them directly or do you do any thing before you are using them in glutaraldehyde?
No, sir. We have to in normal saline, wash in the normal saline. We can use directly.
Okay, why will you like to wash it in normal saline? Because glutaraldehyde is a chemical toxin. Particularly, there are glutaraldehyde remnants on the instrument joints. This can produce a tissue reaction, and in the post-operative period can produce a tissue inflammation and granulation formation. So it is good to wash. Some people have another tray with a sterile normal saline. It is not water for washing, it is sterile normal saline. Then they keep it for 5 minutes for leaching and then they use it again. Okay, right. So this is all about glutaraldehyde.
Omkar, what is the principle for plasma sterilization? How is the plasma sterilization done? You heard of? This is the sterilization by using nascent oxygen. Okay, there is a large sterilizers where you use hydrogen peroxide, and this hydrogen peroxide is splitting into nascent oxygen. That is a very strong antibacterial. And usually they are saying there is 12 minutes, but in real time it takes a little longer time for machine to get started and sterilization to achieve. It takes about 25 to 30 minutes. And most of the lab instruments, now the recommendation is not to use glutaraldehyde because there are a lot of atypical microbial infection. And what is the principle of ETO sterilization? How that is done? You see, in all good theater, you will find they have got ETO sterilizer. Okay, most of the lab instruments now are being sterilized with ETO. So you have ethylene oxide chamber, but it takes long time. It's a long time. You need to keep the instrument in the ETO chamber for overnight, maybe 12 hours. And one has to use it cautiously because this ETO exposure can cause some carcinogenic effect. But they are very effective methods of sterilization. Okay. So I think, Ramanoj, any other question?
I think we can proceed to the next presentation.
Okay. So the next presentation will be on the methods of scrubbing, the principles of antibiotic use in pre-op stage, and universal precautions in surgical practice. It will be taken over by Dr. Shayandi Pradhan, is a junior resident second year at Ramakrishna Mission, Sherapadishtan and Vivian Institute of Medical Sciences. Dr. Shayandi, we can please start sharing screen.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Yes, sir. My topic today is on scrubbing, prophylactic antibiotics, and universal precautions in surgical practice. I will be discussing this part in following headings. First, the scrubbing. Surgical scrub, it is a process of removing or decreasing bacterial count and resident skin flora from hands and forearms to a safe level of surgical acceptance by mechanical scrub with the help of chemical antiseptic agent. The main objective of scrubbing is to remove soil and transient microbes from hands and forearms. It also reduces the resident microbial count as low as possible, and it inhibits rapid rebound growth of microbes. For this, all jewelry should be removed from hands and forearms. Fingernails should be free of polish and trimmed short. Hands and forearms should be free of open lesions and breaks in skin integrity. Now, talking about scrubbing, surgical scrub, the ideal surgical agent must have broad spectrum of antimicrobial activity. It should offer persistent activity against this bacteria so that it is kept low as far as possible. An agent must be low, non-irritating and non-sensitizing. It must not damage the skin and environment. The most commonly used agents are povidone iodine. Chlorhexidine can also be used. In the next slide, the technique, the steps of hand washing are being shown. First, in the first step, the palms are rubbed, then the back of both hands are rubbed. In the third step, interlace fingers and the hands are rubbed together, then interlock fingers and rub the back of fingers of both hands. In the fifth step, the thumb is rotated and rubbed, and finally the fingertips are rubbed, and we go down in the last step in the wrist and the forearm. There are two methods of hand washing, hand scrubbing: brushstroke time method. Brushstroke method has been shown here, and the average duration of hand scrubbing is 5 minutes. After hand washing, the arms are kept above the waist with arms are kept above the waist and hands up. It should proper precaution should be taken so that it does not touch any objects. Avoid dripping on sterile field. Then proper precaution is taken while wearing the sterile gown. While donning the sterile gown, we should keep away from the sterile zone and be aware of the surroundings so that no contamination occurs. After that, sterile surgical gloves are being worn in a sterile manner. Now moving on, in the second part, the prophylactic antibiotics. Prophylactic antibiotics are mainly aimed at preventing surgical site infections. It does not include preoperative decolonization or treatment of established infections in the patient. It is mainly given for the treatment of stress or injury that, in this case, is surgery. The purpose of prophylactic antibiotics is to reduce surgical site infections, which are the most commonest hospital-acquired infection. It also which increases patient morbidity and mortality. It also reduces financial stress of the patient, which is associated with increased post-op hospital stays, costly medication, etc. Now, whether prophylactic antibiotics are required for all, in that there are mainly three factors. First, the type of wound. In case of clean wound, less than 5%, there are less than 5% chance of 5% chance of getting infections. In case of clean contaminated wound, 2 to 10%, contaminated wound 15 to 20%, and dirty wound more than 30%. Now, in the second factor is the patient factors. In case of patient factors, there are systemic factors with patients having comorbidities like diabetes, obesity, old age, malnutrition, steroid use, etc. Local factors, if the patient has poor hygiene or there is hair removal with razor, in case of foreign bodies that are present in the patient's body, and etc. And finally, the technical factors. Technical factors: long operating time, abdominal, non-abdominal surgery, emergency surgeries, minimal access surgeries, etc. Now, selection of appropriate antibiotics. The appropriate antibiotic should be effective against the anticipated microorganism that may cause infection in the particular patient. It should have adequate local tissue level. It should have minimal side effect, cost effective, and preferably single dose. What is the optimal time of timing? Within there are various guidelines, but the most commonly the most commonly practiced is to give within 1 hour before incision with superior efficacy within 30 minutes of incision. Dose adjustment should be given based on dose adjustment should be done based on hepatic and renal function and other associated comorbidities. And the choice of prophylactic antibiotics should be based on local antibiogram. In the next slide, the guidelines, it is a guideline on of giving different types of antibiotic, prophylactic antibiotics in different surgeries, from a cardiac surgery to different types of abdominal surgery is being shown. Moving on to the final part of the discussion, it is the universal standard precautions. In the elements, firstly, there are the elements of standard precautions, the hand hygiene. Hand hygiene, moments for hand hygiene. When moments of hand hygiene should be taken first before touching a patient, secondly before a procedure is done on the patient, thirdly after a procedure, or in case there is contamination with body fluid of the patient, finally after touching a patient, and then after touching a patient's surroundings. Then proper PP kit should be used in case of in practice. The PPE kit should be worn so that proper so that a complete there is a risk of contamination with the patient's body fluid is being anticipated. In addition to that, gloves should be worn. In case of normal examination of patient, care should be taken so that single gloves should not be recycled for other patients. Then goggles, face shield may be used if there is a risk of splay or spillage of body fluids of the patient to the face or other body parts. Patient care equipment. The patient care equipment should be all the patient that are being used should be discarded after use in proper waste management, proper disposed of in the proper waste management according to the guidelines, which I will discuss later. If a patient have cough, fever, or is suspected of any viral serology positive if of any viral serology, isolation of the patient should be done. Proper care should be taken so that any contamination of that particular patient should not come in contact with any other patients or with the medical staff. In case of patient having cough or sneeze, the patient should be taught that it should be done by the patient should first sneeze on the bend of the elbow, so that environment in case of a patient having in case of a patient having any needle prick in a injectable is being given, or if a patient have positive viral serology, the needles or the sharp object should be discarded in proper bag, so that the medical staffs working should not have an exposure. In case of spillage, the spillage control guideline should be followed. 1% sodium hypochlorite should be given over about 20 to 30 minutes, and proper disposal of the cotton with sodium hypochlorite should be done in the waste management according to waste management guideline, and the environment should be cleaned. And finally, the biomedical waste management guidelines. Here there is 4 the four colored bags are used so that the biomedical waste are not disposed of in a wrong manner. The first is the yellow bag, in which the human anatomical waste, animal anatomical waste, soil waste, cytotoxic drugs, chemical waste are discarded. The type of sterilization, it is the bag is incinerated or plasma pyrolysis is being done. In the red bag, recyclable waste like the rubber catheter, IV fluid set, these are being disposed and autoclaving is being done. In the blue bag, glassware, metallic body implants are being disposed and disinfection done by autoclaving. And finally, sharp objects are disposed of in white puncture-proof bag and autoclave or dry heat sterilization done. The government of India has taken an initiative from 15th May 2015. It is called the Kayakalp initiative. It is being done for the for cleanliness and sanitization in public health care facilities. Finally, the surgical safety checklist. This is a WHO given safe list that is being followed in every hospital before induction of anesthesia, before skin incision, and before patient leaves operating room. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Ramanuj.
Yes,
Hi.
sir.
It was a comprehensive presentation, but a few things to describe. Number one is that what is the rationale of giving a prophylactic antibiotic?
Sir,
prophylactic antibiotic.
it is mainly given. Yes, sir. Sir, it is mainly given to reduce the in the post-operative surgical site infection, sir.
Okay, number one. Number two. So that means what is the timing of selection of giving a prophylactic antibiotic?
Sir, the best is to give within 30 minutes of the incision.
Now, within 30 minutes, this is the point that this is the reason I raised this question. Is it before the incision or is it after the incision?
Sir, before the incision, sir.
Before the incision. Very good. So, why is it 30 minutes? Why not 1 hour? Why not 4 hours? What is the logic behind 30 minutes?
Sir, because it takes the antibiotic to go to the local tissue level. For that, it takes to achieve the to achieve that level of now first the antibiotic is administered, and after that, to achieve the level of the local tissue level so that it can act, it takes time. So 30 minutes is an average that should be taken into account.
See, now there are three principles that dictate the use of the timing in this one. I would have expected you to show a very important study by Klassen, Classen, in around 2000, in not 2000, it's by a gentleman called Klassen in the New England Journal of Medicine in EGM, where he showed that what was the varying differences about the timing of administration of antibiotics. Now, the first principle is that half an hour or 1 hour before the placement of an incision is the adequate time in which you have to understand the tissue concentration is at the peak. Now, thereafter, the tissue concentration gradually starts decreasing. So, your incision when made, the bacterial colonization is thus expected to happen when the maximum concentration of antibiotics are there in the tissue. Number one. Number two, the selection of antibiotics should always be in a way that it covers the maximum of organisms that are responsible for that surgery. Example, amoxiclav for
Yes, sir.
surface surgery. Number 3 principle is
Yes, sir.
the repetition of the antibiotic should be done before the area under the curve decreases below a non-therapeutic level. Okay. So these are the things that you are asked in an examination. Right. Now, the next one. You are planning to do an open hernia surgery. What is the
Yes,
antibiotic
sir.
prophylaxis that you will require?
How do you place it? Clean or clean contaminated
Hernia.
surgery?
Very important question.
A hernia surgery is a clean or clean contaminated?
So it's a clean contaminated surgery.
Why?
Sir.
Why contaminated? These are few operations we classically clean. For a routine hernia, I'm not talking of a strangulated hernia. Classical hernia is a clean surgery. There's no question of
Classical hernia
contamination.
is, yes, sir. It's a clean.
Don't confuse it with a complicated hernia. I'm asking just a simple hernia. So it's a clean surgery. And you say that
Yes,
risk of infection is less than 5%.
less than 5%, sir.
So in that case, most of the recommendation is not to give. Now, if you give at all because of other factors, what should be the ideal antibiotic?
Sir, amoxiclav.
Yes, good enough. So it's a surface surgery. Main contaminant is which organism?
Yes, sir.
Which is the most common contaminant?
Staphylococcus
Yes.
epidermidis, sir.
So, even the Staph aureus is also
clean for us,
contaminated.
sir.
So,
Yes,
you choose antibiotic which is acting on Staph. In
Yes,
universal precaution, I expected you to talk a little more. That is, when you are going for surgery, you should assume that all patients are infected. Even if the patient is tested negative, there is a period called window period. So the universal precaution should be
Yes, sir.
practiced in all patients. And while doing surgery or a procedure, there are some guidelines to follow in universal precaution. Okay, so
Okay,
that guideline has to be
Okay,
followed for all procedures, even the ward procedures. And you talked of this, but I expected that you should speak specifically on the universal precaution you do in the theater itself. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Ramanuj, any other point?
No, sir. Sir, no other point.
Okay. So the next speaker will be Dr. Komal Sharma, who is a second year MS PGT at IPGM SK Hospital. She will speak on, you see, there are a lot of energy sources coming. We have picked up only the electrosurgical device today. So the principles of use is rationality and some complications out of use of electrosurgical devices. Dr. Komal Sharma, you can please share your screen.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are audible. The screen has come. Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Good morning, respected faculties. I'm Dr. Komal Sharma from IPGMER, and I shall be talking about the principles, effects, types, and complications of electrosurgical devices. Electrosurgery is the use of alternating radiofrequency current to raise the cellular temperature in such a way so as to coagulate or vaporize tissue. It allows for precise cuts with minimal blood loss. The common word that we use here is cautery, but it is not the same as electrosurgery. It is derived from the word cauterion in Greek, which means hot iron, and it means the destruction or denaturation of tissue by direct application of heat or caustic substances. In 3000 BC, Egyptians first used heat for the treatment of breast tumors and ulcers by direct application. Benjamin Franklin and John Wesley described the use of direct current for medical therapeutics in 18th century. And in 1891, Dirac studied the action of high-frequency alternating current on tissues. The electrosurgical unit, as we know it today, was devised by William Bowie and Harvey T. Cushing in 1926. The basic principles of electricity, which are applicable in electrosurgery. First of all, current. Current is defined as the flow of electrons during a period of time measured in amperes. A circuit is the pathway for the uninterrupted flow of the electrons and flow of the current. Voltage is the force or the potential difference that pushes the current through the resistance, which is measured in volts. And the resistance is the obstacle to the flow of this current. When in case of tissues, this is known as impedance and it is measured in ohms. The standard electrical current that we use for our household appliances, it alternates at 60 hertz. At this frequency, it would cause excessive neuromuscular stimulation. This is why people get electrocuted when they come in contact with live wires. However, neuromuscular stimulation ceases after a frequency of 100 kilohertz, and frequencies above this do not pose any minimal risk for electrocution. So electrosurgical units take an input of standard electric current at 60 hertz and transform it to over 200 kilohertz for surgical use. Types of electrosurgical generators. Originally, they used the generators used current from a wall outlet. It was assumed that after being applied to the patient's body, the current would return to the ground via the patient return electrode. However, current tends to choose the pathway of least resistance, and the current would flow into the ground not only via the return electrode but via any conductive object leading from the patient's body to the ground. This would often lead to alternate side burns. For example, here we have a picture of an alternate side burn caused at the site of an ECG electrode. To deal with this, isolated systems were developed in 1968. Here, the circuit is completed not by the ground, but by the generator itself. So the current flows back only via the patient return electrode and not via any other metallic objects that might be touching the patient and the ground. This avoids alternate side burns and current division. Deactivated isolated systems are a new development if are a more newer development. If the patient return electrode is broken or improperly attached, the generator senses this and the flow of current is deactivated. This prevents electrode site injury due to improper attachment. So the tissue effects, it depends on whether monopolar or bipolar electrosurgery are being used. Monopolar is the most commonly used electrosurgical modality. It is very versatile and effective. In monopolar surgery, the electrode is the active electrode is at the surgical site, and the patient return electrode is somewhere else on the patient's body. The current passes through the patient as it completes the circuit and returns to the electrosurgical unit via the patient return electrode. However, in bipolar electrosurgery, the active electrode and the return electrode are basically the two times of the forceps. One time is the active electrode, and the other is the return electrode, and the return electrode is performed by one tine of the forceps itself. A separate return electrode is not needed, and the circuit is completed there itself. The current does not flow through any other part of the patient's body. So, what are the variables that influence the electrosurgical effect? Firstly, the contact time or the speed of movement. The longer the contact time or the lesser the speed of movement, the higher is the temperature attained. This also longer application time at a particular place also has more potential for tissue spread and produces wider and deeper tissue damage. As the temperature rises, it has different effects on living tissue. Up to 40 degrees, there is no reversible tissue damage. Then up to 47 degrees, there are enzymatic changes and the cell membranes start getting relaxed. Between 47 and 50 degrees, the cell membrane relaxation is complete. With cellular edema, there is a decreased enzymatic action in the cell, and cell death starts to occur after a longer period of application. At 60 to 80 degrees, dehydration starts and cell shrinkage is seen and a white coagulum is formed. Between 80 to 100 degrees, the elastin fibers of the tissue also coagulate. And at 100 to 110 degrees, there's vaporization of the cell contents by drying of the tissues. Beyond 120 degrees, there is carbonation, that is blackening or charring of the tissue. Then another determinant is the type of electrode used, because that determines the current density that flows through the surgical site. A smaller electrode leads to a higher concentration of current if the same power is used. So a small electrode like a needle tip can achieve the same tissue effect with a lower power setting. Again, the area of the patient return electrode also determines the concentration of the current at the return site. So if the area of contact with the return electrode is very small, it tends to cause thermal injury at the site of return. Then there is a generator mode, that is cut, coagulation, or blend. Electrosurgical generators are able to produce a variety of waveforms with corresponding changes in tissue effects. In pure cut, it is said that the duty cycle is 100%, which means that the current is being generated by the generator for all of the time that the appliance is being used. On the other hand, in coagulation mode, it is only 6%. 90% of the time the current is off, and it is on only 6% of the time. Then there are blends, blend modes, blend 1, 2, and 3. Blend 1, 50%, the duty cycle is 50%. In blend 2, it is 40%, and in blend 3, it is 25%. As we can see in this picture, the different tissue effects of the different modes of the electrosurgical generator. When we are using it in the cutting mode, there is expansion of cells which increase in the pressure inside the cell, leading to an explosion of the cells. On the other hand, coagulation mode, in coagulation mode, there is dehydration via heating, and ultimately there is coagulation of the cell membranes. Vaporization is caused in cutting mode. The waveform is continuous, and for this effect, contact with tissue is not needed. At a distance of a few millimeters, the effect starts. Low voltage sparks can be seen with the visible eye, and there is moderate amount of smoke. In fulguration, for fulgurating the tissue, in fulguration mode, hemostasis of small vessels can be achieved, which are less than 1 millimeter in size. The waveform is interrupted, that is coagulation. Coagulation mode, there is no contact with the tissue, no contact required with the tissue. High voltage sparks are seen, and a significant amount of stones of a smoke and charring is produced. For desiccation, homeostasis of small vessels is achieved by continuous cut or interactive, that is coag mode. Contact with tissue is required for this, and it has a similar action to bipolar electrosurgery. And there is a significant lateral thermal spread. The tissue around the site of application also gets heated. And in coaptation, there is a sealing of small to medium vessels less than 2 millimeters by either cut or coagulation mode. The contact is needed, and compression of the vessel wall is needed. And this also has a similar action to bipolar electrosurgery. The fourth determinant is the tissue impedance or the tissue resistance. Different types of tissues in the body provide a different resistance to the flow of current. And the more the resistance, the higher the heat production, according to Joule's system. That H is equal to I square RT, where I is the current, R is the resistance or the impedance, and T is the time of application. As we can see, the highest impedance is given by lungs, scar tissues, adhesions, etc. While muscle, eye, skin, kidney, pancreas, these tissues have a lower impedance to current flow. So now we come to the hazards of electrosurgery. They can be studied under two categories: hazards of open electrosurgery and hazards of laparoscopic electrosurgery. In open surgeries, There may be dangers like leakage current, open circuit activation, improper plate placement causing thermal injury, and electrosurgical smoke. Leakage currents are present in all electrical devices because there is no such thing as an ideal insulator. Some amount of current always leaks via the covering sheet of any appliance. These currents are usually of insignificant magnitude, which are called ohmic leakage currents. However, above a certain limit, usually due to capacitive leakage or insulation failure, they may cause thermal injury to the patient, which is directly proportional to the current concentration at the site of exposure. Then there is open circuit activation. It may occur due to activation of randomly at a site away from the intended one. It can be due to accidental stepping on the footplate or due to faulty pencil control buttons. Improper improper plate placement. This can cause thermal injury as said before. This can be avoided by using a deactivated isolation system. We should avoid the placement near scar tissues, implant sites, or EEG electrodes. A muscular, well-vascularized area is suitable for the placement of the return electrode, and the site must be clean, dry, and shaved. Then is the electrosurgical smoke. Electrosurgical smoke produced during the application of electricity to tissues, usually less than 5 microns in diameter. So there are different types of particles in nose, pharynx, trachea, bronchus, bronchioles, and alveoli. If they get deposited, they cause asthma, bronchiolitis, pneumonia, etc. Then the chemical, these effects are because of the lodgement of the particles in different parts. Then due to chemical effects of hydrocarbons, nitrites, fatty acids, phenols, carcinogens, mutagens, etc., they may cause headaches, watery eyes, cough, burning sensation in the throat, nausea, cardiac arrhythmias, aplastic anemia, acute leukemia, or cancer. And then due to the biological content such as malignant cells, live bacteria, and viruses, there is potential to cause melanoma, HPV, HIV, etc. Hazards in laparoscopic surgery. These include overshooting, overcooking, direct coupling, insulation failure, and capacitive coupling. Here, in a typical laparoscopic instrument, there are different zones of the instrument. 1, 2, 3, and 4. The zone 1 is the visible part of the instrument that we can see while surgery. Zone 2 and zone 3 are the parts of the instrument that are out of the field of view of the surgeon. And zone 4 is the handpiece at which the instrument is held and controlled. In overshooting, the tip of the energized instrument goes beyond the field of vision and causes unintended burns at a distant site. The next is overcooking. It may be due to high power setting or prolonged activation of the foot paddle. It results in charring of melted collagen, thereby decreasing the tissue sealing strength. Then comes direct coupling. It occurs when the active electrode touches another metal instrument. The electrical current flows from the activated electrical instrument to the other electrical instrument that it is touching, and proceeds to the tissue, resulting in unintended bursts. This can also occur if an active electrode is activated while in contact with a metallic plate. Next is insulation failure. Insulation failure can occur when the insulation covering of an endoscopic instrument has been damaged. Cracks allow the electrical energy to escape and burn unintended tissue. The insulation of instruments must be inspected thoroughly before using the instruments. Most damage to insulation occurs during the process of sterilization. Heat with subsequent cooling causes insulation to shrink and then expand, and during this process, cracks and breaks can occur in the insulation. Next is capacitive coupling. During minimally invasive surgery, an inadvertent capacitor may be created by the surgical instrument. This creates an electrostatic field between two conductors. That is, two conductors separated by an insulator. This results in induced current in the second conductor. To prevent this, a full metal cannula is the best to use. Hybrid cannulas, which have a metal part and a plastic part, they have the worst effect because on one hand, capacitance is being created by the metal part. On the other hand, the lateral flow of the heat and minimization of this effect is prevented by the plastic part. So there is significant thermal injury at the site of formation of the capacitance effect. There are techniques like there are some techniques which prevent these injuries. One is active electrode monitoring. When there is insulation failure or capacitive coupling, and when it reaches dangerous levels, the electrosurgical unit shuts down automatically, and the surgical staff are alerted. This detects even the smallest full thickness insulation breaks on lab instruments, virtually eliminating accidental burns due to faulty insulation. There is another technology of return electrode monitoring, whereby generators are microprocessors that monitor the quality and quantity of the contact that the return pad makes with the patient. If the pad contact is interrupted, the generator alarms and gets deactivated, preventing thermal injury at the return site. The different precautions that we can use while using electrosurgery is firstly we should inspect the installation of all our instruments very carefully before start of the procedure. We should use the lowest possible power setting for any required tissue or tissue effect. A low voltage waveform that is cut mode, it has a lesser tendency to cause damage. Brief intermittent activation should be used to prevent lateral thermal injury. Uh, Open circuit activation should be avoided, and the effect should not be activated in close proximity or in direct contact with another instrument. Bipolar electrosurgery is safe and should be used when appropriate. All metal cannula system is the safest choice, as we saw, to prevent capacitance coupling and increased local injury due to that. And available technology like tissue response generator, active electrode monitoring, etc., should be used to eliminate concerns about insulation failure and capacity coupling. Thank you.
Yes. Ramanut.
The first one is that was a very good presentation, but there are a few things to understand. Number one is that whenever you are talking about an energy sources or diathermy, the first one always start with what are the effect of heat on tissue, something that you mentioned little later on. Okay, number one. Number two, the second concern is that whenever we talk about an energy source, the first thing that many people do not understand is that it works on the same electricity that in which your laptop is running now, called alternate current. The only difference between this electricity in the room or the laptop versus the machine is the frequency of the current. So please take some amount of time in explaining what is the frequency of the current and this. This is number one. Number two. Number 3 point of concern is, can you tell me the difference between a coagulation waveform and a cutting waveform? Or can you go back to that slide for a coagulation and a cutting waveform?
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, this one, this picture. Can you take a minute in explaining the meaning of this picture?
Yes, sir. Sir, in the pure path mode, there is constant activation. The electrosurgical unit is active all the time and providing the electrical waves as seen in this graph. While on the other hand, in coagulation, the unit is activated in in bursts at intervals, and it is active for only around 6% of the time and off for 94% of the time. So these electrical bursts this electrical energy is given in bursts rather than a continuous supply as seen in cut forms.
Okay, so that means when you think about this tissue effect, which is the more amplitude of current?
Sir, the amplitude is more in coagulation.
Now, if the amplitude is more in coag, what is the degree of temperature that is produced in a cutting versus a coag?
Sir, the magnitude of temperature will be achieved will be higher in coagulation because of the higher amplitude.
Yes.
Right.
2 minutes.
So that means what is the lateral damage that is done by a coagulation? What is
Sir,
the
the increased chance of lateral thermal injury, sir. Injury to surrounding organs due to like higher rise in temperature.
Okay. Now that means that now, doctor, let us think about three issues. You are cutting the skin because there are many people who use a diathermy, including me, to cut the skin. Which modality will you use in cutting the skin?
Sir, cut modality.
Cut modality.
Pure cut.
Now, it is pure cut or blend 1 or blend 2?
Sir,
What is the disadvantage of a pure cut?
so the temperature, it takes more time to achieve the same temperature.
See, the temperature will be less, as you have said, but the main issue is that in a pure cut, the extent of hemostasis is very poor because the electrons are not staying at one particular side, they jump on to the other side. So please understand that the pure cut is always not a very good hemostatic, but yes, if you are cutting in relation with a scalpel or a cold knife, people have found they have the same results. Now, let us go to the next one. You are dissecting the callot
Yes, sir.
with a diathermy. What mode will you select?
Sir, in that case, uh, sir, since we are trying to avoid lateral thermal injury, and we have structures like CBD in the proximity, so a cut mode will be more suitable. I think, sir. I'm not sure.
See, definitely no, you need something more than a cut because there can be small vessels in the peritoneal covering. But yes, as you have said, I cannot afford an bile duct injury. So we either take a blend 1 or maximum blend 2 because the machines are known to have that effect. When you consider taking a pure coagulation in a lab coat, which structure will need a pure coagulation?
Sir, when we need higher temperatures, for example, sir, when we are dissecting the gallbladder from the liver, sir, at that time there is a higher tendency to bleed. So at that time, coagulation might be more helpful.
Okay, right. So that is what is expected to be known. Thank you. Sir,
Yeah.
done on my.
Actually, the point you said, na, that machine senses. If you are
Yes.
using the old generation electrosurgical devices, they don't have these safety devices. That does not signal that this is not working. The newer energy sources are very advanced and they gives a clear signal. So while using the old type of generators, you should be cautious. The new generator gives the signals that there is an alarm of heart rate is not being in proper place.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We're 9:40. So thank you, Dr. Manoj. Thank you, all the speakers. We have discussed well all the relevant topics. So we say goodbye before puja. We'll join after puja. We have already program made. So we'll join after the puja. We are joining early, I think. Puja will be still 22nd, but we'll be joining, I think, on 17th or 18th.
18, sir.
18th.
18.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
okay. Thank
Happy
you.
Puja, everyone.
Happy puja. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.